Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. The robots in disguise and real American heroes each got their own cinematic adventures in the 1980s, to varying levels of childhood trauma. And there are tentative plans for a live-action CG crossover film to begin production soon. But now, they're crossing paths in a comic book based on a movie that never was, based on cartoons, based on action figures. It's like a turducken of mediums as I'm taking issue with Transformers vs. G.I. Joe, the movie, the official adaptation. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover naturally evokes a movie poster. Heads of various star characters hanging around, helicopters apparently trying in vain to escape the sun that, by its size, is about to engulf the planet, Snake Eyes drawing his sword while Scarlet opens fire while doing a flying pose of some kind, and Roadblock leading a squad of Joes in the background, apparently defending what looks like a remodeled Titan's tower, with a bad redesign. Also, not sure why all the human characters have pink skin. Are they all Majin Buu in disguise, or do they have sunburn? Maybe it's the latter, and that's why Duke looks like he got the worst of it. I see it was his turn to stand guard while the two women on the team were sunbathing, and he didn't bother wearing sunblock. But as long as Lady J is fine, it's all good. There are 3 variants. One, which also has a very dynamic poster quality to it, featuring a lot more villains than heroes, with the characters kind of exploding out at you. A nifty one of Jazz transforming, probably the cover I like the most, and one of Prime wielding some kind of weird alien rifle instead of his iconic weapon, as Snake Eyes flips around him and stands in the foreground. Not bad, but it has a lot of negative space. Definitely best they didn't go with this as a main cover, not nearly as eye-catching. Writing and art all done by Tom Scioli, with some additional production by Chris Mowry after 2 credits pages with a lot of empty space, probably to emulate opening film creds. We begin with a flashback to when Aberneth, the Hawk-Helmed of Jotunheim, fought with Wheeljack and Prowl, and other old gods, while looking like what happens when a G.I. Joe gets bitten by a radioactive He-Man.
How toyetic can you get?
They fought against a man who looks an awful lot like Destro, 'cause it is, who had sold his soul to the evil gods of lies and deception. Also destruction, because of course. In exchange, he got their magics, apparently contained in that jeweled necklace he wears. Eventually, the old gods left, and their exploits passed into myth, along with Aberneth, though some relics remain, like his weapon here. Odd shape, though obviously meant to evoke a hawk, so I imagine it would be used more as a bludgeoning instrument. Either that, or it's a knockoff Mjolnir found at a dollar store, labeled Warrior Hammer. We go to the present day, as Scarlet takes out some training androids, I guess her final step in joining G.I. Joe, as a colonel, welcomes her and says her daddy would be proud. I'm sure I've heard some grizzled soldier type say daddy in movies or TV shows from time to time, but for some reason it just feels odd here. Probably because of the pacing, which is not going to let up, because on a chopper ride later, the Ginger is trying to engage Snake Eyes in conversation, while he holds his gun and a white blob. Dang it, Scarlet, the man can't talk right now. Someone covered his rifle in marshmallow fluff, and he's got to clean it before the fighting starts. Roadblock explains, as we get a panel of the ninja between 2 piles of dead Cobra goons, and his sword coated in blood. Snake Eyes don't talk, 'cause Snake Eyes don't have to. He speaks the language of death. At a briefing, the Joes are informed that an asteroid headed for Earth, which to the rest of the world looks like a dark purple orb, is actually planet Cybertron, and General Hawk has that old Norse weapon for no suspicious reason whatsoever.
Ha ha! Foreshadowing.
Of course, at this point, they only know the approaching object as a planet of giant killer robots, and you've all got a ticket to ride. And now we're going to lose a chunk of our budget to fight a lawsuit I just got us in by accidentally quoting a Beatles song. Man, those lawyers act fast. First class? Usually they stow us in boxes with the rest of the war toys. Hey, now I'm actually looking forward to Toy Story 5. Usually they stow us in boxes with the rest of the war toys. Use the cheapest packing material they can find, too. Ripped up and crumpled mail inserts? Really? All the funding for the military and they can't spring for some decent bubble wrap? And so, in a very Ark-looking ship, the Joes arrive on Cybertron, fight some Decepticons, as we get narration in the form of a letter Snake Eyes writes to his sister. He says the planet isn't what he thought, that there aren't just bad robots, but good ones too, as they arrive at Metroplex and join forces with Optimus Prime and the Autobots. However, the Decepticons have made allies as well, in the form of Serpentor and Cobra. Not sure why Baroness's face is all bandaged up. Is she cosplaying a mummy, or did she just get back from the plastic surgeon? Either way, it tells you something about how inconveniently Cobra schedules its plans for global conquest. And is that Deep Six? I thought he was a Joe. Or is this just some generic Cobra flunky? Who cares? As Cybertron gets nearer...
Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
Scarlet asks Prime if there's a Cybertronian word for love. And then they get separated by a big explosion. Just as well, his response was going to be a screechy series of ones and zeros anyway. She's overpowered by several Cobra generals, like Zartan and Major Blood, who have been given gifts by Megatron of might, sight, and magic, because I guess Transformers are magical now. Then we jump to the Ginger in a hospital bed, being told that the Joes and Cybertron were merely cartoons, a fantasy she needs to wake up from. In reality, the closest thing to an Autobot they have is an artificial intelligence borrowed from a nearby university, modeled after Scarlet's favorite, Optimus Prime, who is prompted to greet her. Despite talking as if she's watched these cartoons as a kid, she's drawn to look pretty young in this panel, almost like a teenager. Maybe because she didn't have any pronounced freckles in previous pages. Anywho, she immediately attacks some orderlies who are posed like they're trying out for the next season of Power Rangers. Then she smashes a window, revealing she's still on Cybertron, and that the hospital was an illusion. Yet somehow the overpriced medical bill will be very real.
Why would you think that's unnecessary?
Optimus was apparently damaged off-screen because when she rejoins the heroes, she mentions having shared a bond with the leader, so quotes Voltron as she goes all headmaster, piloting Prime's body while encompassed inside his cranium, leading to a panel of our protagonists marching into battle. As floating words tell us they're doing it in slow-mo. You know, I'm beginning to think this comic book about toys and space travel isn't taking its premise very seriously. We get a rundown of the big fight, Joes versus Decepticons, including Snake Eyes going after Starscream, who has Cobra Commander in his pilot's seat, and Screamer stopping his sword with his hands while still in plane mode. Clever and kind of fun. Hawk has apparently used the ancient weapon to decapitate, I'm gonna say Cyclonus, and Destro says he recognizes it as having belonged to its original owner, Aberneth, whom he killed eons ago. As the general's surname is Abernathy, it's heavily implied the warrior was his ancestor, as he smashes the jewel on Destro's chain while knocking off his faceplate, revealing a desiccated pink visage beneath, with glowing red eyes. Really should have gone with a bolder shade of crimson there, Destro. If you're gonna cosplay Red Skull, go all out on some decent makeup. Scarlet, meanwhile, has been grappling with Megatron, who's wearing the Matrix of Leadership like a trophy necklace, while not shying away at all from the Rock'em Sock'em Robots reference, and the evil tyrant is soon defeated. Megatron is fallen. You might want to make sure he's done for so he doesn't come back. Trust me when I say you do not want the revenge of the fallen. This leads to a standoff between the heroes and villains. That, I guess, is resolved when Prime gets his head back as well as the Matrix. Apparently Scarlet was using a special exosuit duplicate. Hey, that makes her like another more obscure 80s merchandise cartoon.
The Centurions!
And because his noggin was placed there by Cosmos and Buzzsaw, one of Soundwave's cassettes, this apparently fulfilled some prophecy, according to a sudden Alpha Trion. Autobot and Decepticon together will crown the king of the universe. Hey, I know that's actually your job. Tell that to Robo Grandpa over there. Although, if you sounded like Peter Cullen, I think... Oh, come on, he's got a glorious man voice. How is that blasphemous? I mean, a couple of Joes helped put his head there too, Stalker and Flint, but maybe the prophecy we just heard about mentions them in passing or something. Cobra Commander almost gets away, were it not for Wheeljack snagging his parachute, and the way his head is turned, it looks like he wasn't even looking, so kudos on his robo-reflexes. This gives each of the Joes a chance to knock him around, with Roadblock dealing the final punch that breaks his faceplate, and causes him to spray blood out of his mouth. Yeesh. The story ends with Block asking if anyone recognizes the calloused, misshapen mug before them, and Snake Eyes pulls off his mask. That's suddenly a helmet in the last panel. Weird. Revealing half his face is pink and malformed as well, as he calls the commander Daddy. You can't know that for sure until you get those DNA results back from Harvey Dent. Seriously, again with Daddy? So weird. Anyway, that's where the story ends, but the comic does technically continue. After actor credits, where the Joes and Transformers have real names attached to them, for the bots, they're clever references, there's an interview with Shanna O'Hara about her turn from martial arts into acting as Scarlet, and how some fans of the movie have shipped her character with Duke, Snake Eyes, and even Optimus. Despite this, she confirms there's nothing between her and any of her co-stars.
The shipper, able to detect romantic connections where clearly none exist.
C-3PO and Chewbacca are definitely a couple.
Other articles discuss the special effects used, trying to remain as practical as possible, using very little, if any, CGI, instead using suit actors like Orion Paxton as Prime, and an advanced, fully cybernetic actor using artificial intelligence to play Megatron, which is why he's credited as playing himself. Given some AI, I can imagine a hollow yet raspy voice saying, "Optimus here, Prime! The feat of will be, and now die then! 3 extra fingers on one hand!" There's a page of director's commentary for each page of the story, followed by each page in their initial pencils. Of course, I'm not going to show them all. Hey, did Scarlet originally drop an F-bomb here? Then closing on more art by Scioli, one alternate for a free comic book day release, and a couple images that look like they could have been modeled after posed action figures.
It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
That was Transformers vs. G.I. Joe, the movie adaptation, and it was not what I expected. Truth be told, it's adapting IDW's first crossover between the franchises, a 13-issue maxi-series that I have not yet read. The premise is how that series would be adapted into a theoretical movie, which would then be redone as a 20-odd page comic. This is why the pacing is so jarring, why things seem to just happen that we don't see or never get explained. I had forgotten this when finally deciding to read it and script this review, so to say that it was confusing would have been apt. That said, it's apparent that this is a kind of send-up, spoofing the kind of rapid pace movies tend to go with to tell stories of multiple chapters or installments in about 2 hours. As with so many cinematic iterations of tales from other mediums, various changes are made, some minor, some potentially major. It's more of a fun companion to the preceding series, with bonus features that nicely play into the idea of this movie existing in real life, like Prime's actor talking about how he was a bit too old for Transformers, though did watch Rescue Bots with his grandkids. He'd eventually go on to fight to play the valiant Autobot leader, because after reading so many of the older stories, he found Optimus was always Optimus, characterized much the same across iterations. Are you sure about that, Mr. Paxton?
We will kill them all. You defend my family, or die.
Maybe he lives in a universe where Michael Bay stopped at just the one movie, and the sequels were all made better because they had other directors. Oh, what a dream that would be. The comic is also pretty short, the story making up about half the book, and the other half being real and fictionalized behind-the-scenes editions. Personally, I didn't much care for Scioli's art. It looks like colored pencil, like someone did this as a long-term side project when they could spare an hour or so between other responsibilities. However, there's definite skill and competence behind it, even if you could point out some errors like Megatron's cannon being on the wrong side or characters looking rather stiff. I would not call him a bad artist, it's just that the presentation and aesthetics aren't really to my taste. And hey, I did think it was kind of fun that he gave that doctor a receding hairline that looked so much like the Cobra emblem, with 2 points like fangs. I was totally expecting a 65-page one-shot that referenced or played on events or tropes of the respective movies, a more serious, focused adventure. Instead, it was a satirical, abridged version of a story I haven't read. While I didn't love it, I can at least appreciate and even respect the kind of parody the writer was going for. And maybe things will make sense when I finally get around to reading the series it's based on. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.